Hello and welcome. This is the final video in our Metalcore saga, 2010s, the teens.
Welcome to Tune Fever, baby.
Well, folks, it took a long time to get here, approximately 2 decades. We have moved from the 90s to the 2000s, once again to the 2000s, and now finally to the 2010s. And one can only guess as to what the future of metalcore holds. But for now, this is where we are. So this will be the final episode in the Histaga, a historical reflection upon metalcore. And also, I hope you like the music that I'm recommending in this saga because I think it's good. Okay, because this is the final episode, it's kind of like the review before the test. So here we have all of them except for the 2000s. So maybe we should cover that. Great. So first of all, in the 2010s, it became trendy to incorporate electronic stuff like drum machines, synths, effects, and like backing tracks. And some of that's true at live shows too, and it can be kind of disappointing, honestly. But yeah, that kind of became more trendy, some more like effects. It's not all simply guitar and drums and bass and vocals. There are some other elements incorporated to kind of flesh out the a modern sound. Next up, we have breakdowns. So breakdowns are very important in metalcore. They're kind of known in metalcore for kind of replacing the idea of the guitar solo. They're very slow, and people will go like this, very slow. And then there will be a mosh pit forming, and everyone will, I don't know. It's kind of, honestly, mosh pits are kind of interesting because everyone kind of politely attacks each other. But yeah, I don't know. I've moshed before. I tried it, and it's not, maybe it's not my thing. I don't really get it. But I suppose for some people it's rather cathartic, and these breakdowns they kind of provide the atmosphere for this sort of catharsis. And in a way, I suppose that's because breakdowns are very cathartic. Next up, we have clean and scream vocals. You know, we've talked about this with other kinds of metal too, and other kinds of metalcore as well. And here they are. And sometimes in the 2010s, the more clean vocals can be kind of terrible, but there are a lot of bands with good clean vocalists. But I don't know, this sometimes it can get a little whiny sounding, and but there's great bands who do the clean side very well, and of course scream vocals, it's metal. Next up, they spin their guitar around a lot, and I mean a lot. I've been to some metalcore shows where the dude just does it like 20 times in a row, and you're just in the front row like, oh, okay, let me stand back once and hope I don't get my block knocked off. Yeah, I don't know. That's what you're into. Yeah. Okay. Next, there a lot of metalcore bands are more on the nose with their faith. It's like really obvious about their faith in their like lyrics and their messaging as a band, and how they kind of conduct themselves. It's becoming more acceptable, if that's a word. It's been acceptable, but in the past as well. At least, there's some people who will not accept that, and they'll be mad if there's a Christian metal band. They'll be kind of off put, but around the 2010s, it's kind of like it's very much a thing, and there's a lot of bands who are just like very obvious with their faith at the same time as making great metalcore. And then honestly, it's not that heavy relative to other kinds of metal, which isn't a bad thing. It's definitely not a bad thing. It's about how good the music is, and sometimes going as heavy as possible is a good thing, and sometimes writing really really solid music and being heavy is also awesome. So here are some distinctives, and then we can kind of put them all together. And maybe this is maybe this is just kind of something to look at. I don't really feel like going through it, but if you're taking notes for the test, I mean, here's kind of all of the episodes of the saga with their distinctives kind of here together for your reviewing purposes, and it's kind of interesting to look at and see some of the differences. Yeah, I think that this is an interesting way to organize metalcore, because definitely it's not all the same. It's very, very different. Um, yeah. So now we'll get into my recommendations for the 2010s metalcore albums. Let us begin. So I do two classics and two favorites and two interesting. Um, for those who are not well versed in this series of metal videos that I do, the subgenres, I recommend these albums to give you kind of a taste of what this specific subgenre of metal is like, to get that sound in your ear. And I think it would be helpful if you're kind of exploring and getting into metal. And I just love them. So here goes. First classic is the August Burns Red album, Constellations. So they're kind of more technical on the technical side. Their drummer is ridiculous. And then also, the other musicians in the band are ridiculous, but I'm a drummer, so I'm kind of drawn to that. August Burns Red, they're pretty famous for their drummer, really. Yeah, this is my favorite album of theirs. And maybe they do kind of the tropes of 2010s metalcore. They're kind of like really kind of on, they've always kind of been on the cutting edge of that, of what ends up trending. And that's not to say that their music is necessarily all trendy or whatever. It's just that what they do really stuck. So they're absolutely a classic. And yeah, this one in particular is what I'll recommend from them. Another classic is this For Today album called Breaker. For Today is a really terrific band. They have some albums that I absolutely love. This one by them being my absolute favorite. I've been listening to this one for a long time, since I was in 8th grade. Yeah, and this album, it's got a lot of heaviness. It's got a really, really good ear for riffs. I mean, some of these riffs are just so awesome, and some of the drumming and some of like the bell, the zill bell or whatever he's got. Amazing drumming, and this is one of those bands that's very obviously Christian as well. An absolute classic, absolutely. And now let's get into what I'm calling in my favorites category. This is the second album from Silent Planet, called Everything Was Sound. It's my favorite one by Silent Planet. The concept of this album is really cool. It's very like psychological. And the booklet for the CD kind of explains some of that stuff, like what they're kind of shooting for. And every song is kind of about a different kind of it's kind of like a different psychological phenomenon that like people are struggling with. Like there's songs about like PTSD, for example, and paranoia and things like that. And each song's kind of like topical in a way, and in addressing the realness of those topics. This album has some really awesome sounding stuff on it. I would say, yeah, it's very, very creative. The singer's approach to vocals is kind of something to get used to. He's kind of like spoken word poetic screaming, except it is in rhythm. I mean, it's not full on spoken word or at all. And it's very tastefully done, but it is a very unique approach to doing vocals for a metal band. So that is definitely standout. Yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. Very, very cool. Next up, we have Fit for a King, Slave to Nothing. Fit for a King is a band that is from Texas, and I have a friend who used to be in it, and now they're a pretty humongous band. Um, this one's my favorite. This one has, honestly, I think it's probably the only full album of theirs that I love, because I like stuff from their other uh, albums, but they kind of have some different approaches during like kind of each album sounds kind of different. For example, they have some kind of Slipknot sounding stuff, which it's kind of interesting. Um, this one's probably the truest to what would fit into like a 2010s metalcore idea. Yeah, it's a really wonderful album. Great playing on it, and great vocals, very great vocals. Um, check it out. Another Christian band, and I don't remember if I mentioned Silent Planet was a Christian band. They are too. Now starting the interesting section, we have Invent Animate. Their album called Still World. And at this point in time, Invent Animate went with a comma between the two words, but I understand that they're not doing the comma anymore. So the stylization of their name has changed since this album came out. Anyway, look at this album cover. It's not a metal album cover. However, listen to the music. It's absolutely metal. And the thing about Invent Animate is that they incorporate a lot of different kinds of metal into what they do. And that includes sort of things like some kind of like atmosphere, maybe from something like black metal. They get these like atmospheric ideas and kind of ambience, and then also they'll do some kind of really like it's like gent, you could say. It's just very syncopated, some of their stuff. Like the band is really just in unison. But they have a unique approach to the 2010s metalcore thing. They're a little progressive metal, a little bit, but absolutely fits in this category, I would say. Next up, oh yeah, Black Tongue. This, what is this even called? The Unconquerable Dark, I want to say. Yeah, Black Tongue, The Unconquerable Dark. Wow. So this one is like it's kind of a mixture of metalcore and like doom metal. It's so huge. It's so huge, but it really is kind of a blend because it's not just straight up doom metal. It's absolutely metalcore mixed with doom metal, and that's what makes it such an interesting listen. I absolutely love this album. It's huge. It's I mean, I can't recommend it enough. But it is extremely different than these other ones because it's so much slower and doomier. But it's, like I said, it's just massive. So the sources cited, see, we have August Burns Red and well, actually, I forgot to change that one. Yeah, see, that Under Oath album I had on this list, but then I realized it was from 2008. So it kind of sorted some things around. And then we have Jaden Smith, who's an inspiration for doing the metalcore series. And the thing about this, let's look at this quote from Jaden Smith, because Jaden Smith quotes and tweets are always so full of wisdom. It says, when you're thinking about something happy, you're thinking about something sad. And when you're thinking about an apple, you also think about the opposite of an apple. Now, what exactly is, I'm not sure. Sorry, back to the quote. Yeah, sorry, I really shouldn't veer off on my tangents here. We've got some real intellect going on. It's a tool for understanding mathematics and things with two separate realities. Jaden Smith, the great mathematician, as we know. But for creativity, that comes from a place of oneness. That's not a duality consciousness. And, dash Jaden, aka Jaden Smith, aka son of Will Smith, famed actor and best rapper ever. And the thing is about this quote that's so interesting is it's this oneness. It's not a duality consciousness. You think about metalcore, it's the blend of hardcore and metalcore. And at first, it kind of was two distinct things that were trying to be blended together. But anymore, maybe in like the 2010s, I would really say metalcore kind of became one thing. It really is not so much a mixture of hardcore and metal. It's kind of its own sound. And so that's what's so interesting and insightful about this Jaden Smith quote. I really hope that your takeaway from this metalcore saga is simply this, that it comes from oneness and that it is not a duality consciousness. See you in the next one.